Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
What else can you tell us about what you've learned by looking under the hood here in terms of how wide this net really was in terms of the Biden weaponization of its agencies and trying to take down their political enemies?
Well, Maria, I think God shined on us when Donald Trump won this election because we've been able to find out what really happened. You mentioned the Russia hoax. We now know from Tulsi Gabbard's disclosure, she declassified that there was a memo in December of 2016. That's the start of what I would say is the conspiracy to get Trump. And they did it all throughout his term. Then they did it on January 6th and after. I would just point to, again, deranged Jack Smith can show you the path. Deranged Jack Smith had a conspiracy across the country. He targeted all these electors, and Senator Johnson mentioned Wisconsin, but then he utilized a network of local prosecutors, attorneys general. It's all coming out, Maria, and the power of this presidency, and General Bondi is the one that really set me on this course with the weaponization group, is to get uncover what's going on and hold them accountable. And I say this over and over again. We're going to prosecute these people every way we can. We're also going to name and shame them. They should be, for history, known as the people that have targeted fellow American citizens in order to get Trump. It's a scandal beyond anything we saw. Arctic frost is only the beginning of the disclosures that are still coming in this important time. And again, the pardons are protection for the people who are trying to do their job under the Constitution, doing normal things. By the way, the Democrats did it in 1960, famously. JFK had alternate electors in Hawaii. They signed up. They served the role. They're dead now. I wanted to posthumously pardon them to point to this fact that how hypocritical this is. But it doesn't matter what the law, it doesn't matter what the truth. It's get Trump and get Trump supporters, and we've got to stand up to that.
Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday, folks. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, I've got a dirty little secret. The weaponization of the government of the United States against Americans continues. And folks, just listen to this from the new group that I'm honored to be part of, Weaponization Watch. Let me read you something from weaponizationwatch.com before we bring our guest in. Dr. Ron Elfenbein is a Maryland emergency room physician who became a national voice during the COVID-19 pandemic, running multiple testing and monoclonal antibody treatment centers in partnership with the Maryland Department of Health and U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. He was recognized even for his service with citations from the Maryland Governor, the General Assembly of Maryland, the Maryland State Medical Society. And despite this record, he was indicted in April of 2022 on healthcare fraud charges, an action that occurred before prosecutors had reviewed any patient charge. Dr. Elfenbein endured a 3-week trial in 2023 and was initially convicted, but months later, the Chief Judge James Bredar issued a 93-page opinion completely acquitting him, finding that, quote, no reasonable jury, unquote, could have found guilt because the coding decisions at issue were legally permissible and supported by expert testimony. And we'll get into all that. The judge also granted a new trial in the alternative, criticizing the government's evidence as atmospheric, lacking factual and regulatory foundation. Well, in 2025, the Fourth Circuit reversed the acquittal, placing Dr. Elfenbein back in jeopardy and facing a second trial. His counsel argues that the original prosecution was politically motivated, launched shortly after the doctor publicly criticized the Biden administration's decision to halt monoclonal antibody treatments, which was a dumb idea, by the way, halting those antibody treatments. Letters from the former Maryland governor described the doc as a man of integrity, a community pillar, and someone who is blindsided by an indictment that has devastated his family, his career, and finances. Dr. Elfenbein is now seeking intervention to end what he and his supporters call a clear case of lawfare. It's unnecessary, it's unjust, and it's harmful continuation of this prosecution that the trial judge already found was legally unsupported. Well, Dr. Ron is my guest today. Sir, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Colonel. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on and helping us get your story out there just a little bit more, my friend. Dr. Elfenbein and I met back in December at the first Weaponization Watch event in New York City, and I'm honored to have you on here. You know, you just watched Ed Martin, who is the weaponization guru in the Department of Justice now, and I think an ally of ours, to be honest with you. Do you firmly believe your case fits into what he's talking about? I mean, he was kind of in the context of the Russia hoax and those kind of things, but I think it does. I think your case and those like it fit squarely into his wheelhouse.
100%. I mean, there's no, I have done nothing wrong. I contend that until my dying day. And the chief judge of the state of Maryland, who, as you pointed out, was actually the adjudicator of the trial, who sat through the entire trial, also pointed that out. So it's not just my opinion, it's his opinion as well, that the government had no case, no evidence, no expert testimony, nothing. And yet, you know, I'm still finding myself in this situation. And yes, unfortunately, this is, I think, a very clear case of weaponization. And I hope, you know, by the end of this discussion, you'll agree with me about that.
Yeah, the other question I had for you before we get into the details of the charges and those kind of things is, you know, one of the things Mr. Martin talks about is holding these folks in the government that use the government against American citizens like you and me accountable. Are these prosecutors that you're dealing with today in 2025, are they different than the prosecutors that were in that same office that originally prosecuted, or is it the same crowd?
It's the same crowd. That's the problem. It's the same crowd. So they got to go in there and root out all these corrupt people. And look, I mean, the line prosecutors, as much as I dislike them and whatever, because they're trying to destroy my life, that's their job. So, this is coming, or at least came from higher above them and above their pay grade. And unfortunately, you know, you mentioned that it was appealed. It was the Biden DOJ that appealed it, and they appealed it right before Trump was inaugurated. And I just think, to your point about Ed Martin, you know, that the right hand has no idea what the left hand is doing now, and we just got to find the right person in the Trump administration to just take a step back and just say, "Oh my God, what is going on here? We got to stop this." Because I think the wheels were sort of in motion once Trump people came into office, and they're just sort of like, "Oh, they got thousands of cases, and nobody's really taking a hard look at this to say, well, this is something we really want to pursue."
Yeah, so these are federal charges. They're federal prosecutors, well within the control of Attorney General Pam Bondi, just to make sure I'm clear on that and the audience is clear.
100%, yes.
Yeah. Have you,
Yes.
as part of your request for relief, have your attorneys communicated directly with Bondi's office?
They've tried, you know, you send a letter, you send an email, you try to get a hold of somebody. It's not always the easiest thing in the world. So yes, we're trying, and we're trying every option that we possibly can, and every lever that we can pull, we're definitely trying, but it's, you know, it's an uphill battle. It's trying to find that one person who can make that connection. You know, that's our issue. Ed Martin has actually been very, very magnanimous. I've talked to him personally. I believe he's on my side. He's told me he's on my side. He's trying to get this all worked out, but you know, these things take time, and he's only one person, and he's got a lot on his plate. So I'm really trying the best I can to get the story out there, because I'll tell you something, Colonel, I haven't gone to these weaponization seminars and things like that. I just am just mystified at how many people like myself are out there. It's just mind-boggling that there's so many people that this has happened to, and it's so frightening. And that's, I think, a take-home point for your audience, that you literally, I mean, my life was upended like that. You could wake up one morning and your life is completely turned 180 degrees because somebody doesn't like you or whatever, and they can just destroy your life out of thin air without any question. And I mean, I
Yeah.
was a regular person. I have 4 kids. I was like, doing my job, trying to do the right thing. And then all of a sudden my life just completely turned upside down. And I could be anybody, it's
Yeah.
very frightening.
Yeah, folks, you could go to weaponizationwatch.com and see that the doctor's case is one of the cases that our organization, led by Cynthia Hughes, is highlighting because and remember though what Ron just said is that it's one of thousands and thousands that are still out there. Even though we've got a Trump administration that wants to do the right thing and has been told to do the right thing, and the president is leading it with so many people still in the system. I call them resistors, Ron. I don't know if they're for sure resisting or if they're just going with the status quo. Bureaucracy likes its inertia, and nobody likes to try to slow it down just because they're bureaucrats sometimes. And I suspect some of that is going on with these federal prosecutors. But honestly, it takes intent to refile, to refile the charges and ask for another trial after the DOJ from Biden is gone. That takes intent.
That happened
so
before.
That's not resistance. That's malicious.
Yes. And just to your point, Colonel, Cynthia and the Weaponization Watch are absolutely amazing. She's an amazing woman. She's just a wonderful person. And Weaponization Watch is a great organization. So I highly encourage your listeners to get involved and to please to go to the website and support Cynthia any way you can. She's fantastic.
Absolutely right. And we will tag there when I do the production version of the show, folks, and send it out on X. I will tag Weaponization Watch's handle. And of course, Dr. Elfenbein's too, and Cynthia's too, because it's important. I mean, big things start with very small circles of people, and right now that's where we're at. But we've got some very powerful people in that small circle, and I agree with you. I think Mr. Martin is an ally of ours, and that website's probably helping him in his weaponization effort. One more question before we go to the break, though. This experience itself, give people a sense of what it's done to you professionally at depth for a minute.
Yeah, it's giving me PTSD to even talk about it. Honestly, I'm a physician. I'm an emergency room doctor. I deal with people, horrible situations, awful things all the time. And I will tell you that absent a death of a family member, this is probably the worst thing that I could ever imagine. It destroyed me. I couldn't work for 2 years. I'm a dedicated doctor. I like helping people. I like making people feel better. I like saving people's lives. I wasn't able to do that for 2 years. And I trained a long, long, long time to be able to do that. And that was taken away from me. I was debanked off of tons of platforms. I lost my TSA pre-check. I'm very active in my children's lives. I have 4 children, and I go to my kids' schools all the time and give presentations and chaperone things. And I wasn't able to do that anymore because now I wasn't even convicted. I was just accused of a crime, and I was blocked from being able to do that. I had to surrender my rifle. But more importantly, I mean, forget about me. I have 4 kids, and the only child that was spared was my youngest because he was only 3 at the time. The other kids, they're all well-adjusted, smart, wonderful kids, and they all had to go into therapy. One of them, my middle daughter, she was like 12 at the time, and she wouldn't get out of my bed. She slept with me every single night. She would not leave my side. And I couldn't sleep for 2.5 years. I literally stared at the ceiling every single night. I was miserable. I couldn't leave my house. I didn't want to do anything. It's just so, when your government comes after you, look, I've said this a lot, if you're committing fraud and you're cooking your books and your taxes, and that you're doing that, and they come after you and they catch you. I tried and they caught me. Okay, so what? But when they come after you for bogus reasons, for something you didn't do, and you're innocent, it is completely debilitating. And it was just the absolute worst experience of my life. My wife's a physician. She treats kids with cancer. She's a pediatric cancer doctor at Johns Hopkins. She was devastated. I mean, we literally, our lives were completely upended. And you can't put it into words. It's just, again, you think about horrible things happening to someone. It's like death of a family member, and this is just below that. It's just the worst and the best day of my life. was the opposite when I found out that the judge wrote that 93-page opinion. That was by far
Yeah.
the happiest day of my life. I was just, for the first time ever, well, the first time in the last 3 years after that happened, I slept.
Mhm.
I slept the whole night.
That's good news. Well, I've met a bunch of the kids involved in these cases by being able to attend some of these seminars and participate in them. And believe me, you and your family are in our family's prayers for sure. When I talk about what I've heard with my family, my wife is just appalled at what's going on here, continuing to go on. Especially, we've got to get down to the bottom of this and rectify this situation for the future for our kids, so they don't ever have to go through it. You know, something's obviously wrong in the federal prosecution area, and we need to fix it. And we got to go to a break, Doc. When we come back, we'll show a little clip about the charges, and then we'll do a deep dive for the rest of the show into these charges and what they mean, because they're kind of technical, but it's important for you to understand, because I think you'll recognize some of this stuff, because we all deal with the healthcare, insurance, and Medicare, Medicaid, that kind of stuff. And it's very important you understand what's going on. I'll be right back with Dr. Ron Elfenbein.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
The doctor behind the First Call Medical Center here at BWI strongly denies the allegations against him of Medicare fraud by the federal government as people continue to line up here to get COVID tests.
To date, we probably tested about 500,000 people.
Dr. Ron Elfenbein is seen here at the grand opening of the BWI clinic during the darkest days of the pandemic. He's charged now with 3 counts of federal health care fraud. The indictment claims Elfenbein owns Doctors Urgent Care LLC, doing business as First Call Medical Center, and claims he submitted bills to Medicare for services patients seeking COVID tests didn't really need. Elfenbein required that the COVID-19 tests and the reporting of results be bundled, the indictment reads. Medicare was billed in combination with more lucrative but medically unnecessary services. Prosecutors claim Elfenbein told his staff the services were the bread and butter of how we get paid. First Call Medical Center also operated the COVID testing clinic at the City of Praise Ministries in Prince George's County, according to the company's website. Prosecutors claim Elfenbein is responsible for more than $1.5 million in fraudulent claims. In a written statement, Elfenbein's lawyer calls him a leading provider of COVID-19 testing and treatment to the community. Quote, a trial in this case will prove not only that Dr. Elfenbein is innocent of the charges hastily brought by the government, but that during a time of unprecedented need, Dr. Elfenbein and his staff saved the lives of numerous Marylanders, wrote attorney Michael Lawler. Patients who got tests at BWI or City of Praise and who are concerned Medicare might have been billed for allegedly fraudulent services in their names might be able to detect the charges in their quarterly Medicare summary notice, according to a spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Maryland. The government does not allege that any patients suffered any financial losses, the spokesperson said.
At BWI Airport, Scott Broom, WUSA 9.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and Dr. Elfenbein is my guest today. We're talking about the case of weaponization of the justice system against him by the DOJ that was operating under Joe Biden, who appealed the case after he was acquitted by the judge in a 93-page decision. 93. Chief judges don't write 93-page decisions and make their staff and their legal assistants go through something like that if they don't feel firmly in the right on that. But unfortunately, that Biden DOJ appealed it, and now the doc is back up to look at another trial again, even though he was thoroughly acquitted. The appeals court reversed that and remanded the case back for a new trial. Dr. Elfenbein, let's dive into the specifics of the allegation. They kind of talked a little bit about it in that clip there, but you sent me a code sheet as part of my prep for this. Unfortunately, it doesn't show well on the screen, so I decided not to put it up on the screen. But just give the specifics of what exactly did the government claim you did again with this coding and billing?
Yeah. So it is a little confusing. So I'm sorry, it's going to take a minute. So I'm just going to give you some background
you have plenty
information.
Of time. I don't need to say another word. You just run with it, and when we got to take a break, I'll tell you we got to take a break if that's how much time you need. Keep going.
Oh, no, it shouldn't be that bad. But okay. So the government. So first of all, I was the medical director for the facility. So I was not boots on the ground. I was not seeing patients. We hired nurse practitioners and PAs to see the patients. So we saw during the time of the indictment, we saw over 100,000 patients, and the government looked at 3 of them initially. And I will tell you that most people assume that when you submit a claim, so you go to your doctor for a cold or whatever, and your doctor sees you, your doctor bills your insurance company. The doctor does not provide the chart to the insurance company. The only time the insurance company gets a copy of the chart is if they request it as part of an audit. Otherwise, you just submit the bill. You never submit the actual chart. The only way to know, so the coding is based on what's in the chart. So the only way to know that there was quote unquote fraud, in my case, they're looking at what we call upcoding, meaning you're basically padding the bill, which of course we didn't do, but that's what the allegations are. The only way to know that is to look into the charts. Now, the government did not have access to the charts because I'm the keeper of the records, and the only person that could get them to the government was me. And they didn't subpoena them until after I was indicted. So you tell me how they can claim that you committed fraud without actually looking into the charts first. And I know that because I didn't submit them to them as part of a subpoena until after they had indicted me. So the whole case is around what's called E&M, evaluation and management coding. So whenever you see a provider, so if you just go to your doctor for a flu shot and you just see the tech and they give you a flu shot, you're not going to be billed an E&M code, or if you are, it's a level 1. Once a provider, a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a PA gets involved, you have to bill, there's 5 levels, and you can't bill a level 1 anymore. So it's either 2 through 5. And it's based on this chart that we were just talking about, Colonel. That it's hard to see, but this is the coding algorithm basically that tells you what you should be billing. If you bill too high, it's called upcoding. That's bad. You can go to jail, you can have fines, you can do everything, and the government can come after you. If you bill too low, you can get fined, you can go to jail, the government can come after you. So, and it's very ambiguous. At my trial, not only did we put forth expert testimony that said it was ambiguous, but the government did as well. So anyway, back to the charges. They said that we were, number 1, providing services that were medically unnecessary. Number 2, we didn't spend enough time with the patients. At my trial, the expert testimony of their own quote unquote expert was that time doesn't matter when you're billing. Time doesn't matter at all. And number 2, not only did the CDC and the FDA, but Medicare as well required or requested that every patient that gets tested for COVID also see a provider, which is what we did. Additionally, you can't just walk into a doctor's office or a radiology center and say, you know what, I want a chest x-ray. Somebody has to order that. And the only way that can happen is if you see a provider first. Now, once the pandemic went on, various state governments and the federal government started to provide for mass testing centers. But that had to be through legislation, or executive action. Otherwise, physicians or a medical provider had to order the test. And the only way for that to happen is for you to see a provider. And the government asked us and said, every patient should see a provider. So their own testimony combated what they indicted me for. At trial, and we saw 100,000 people, over 100,000. The government looked at 5 total charts, and they never even had an expert coder look at those 5 charts. They just had government lawyers look at those 5 charts. We hired, at my expense, an expert who was the president of the American Professional Coders Association. And he looked at hundreds of charts. And he said, not only was the coding spot on, but we may have undercoded in a couple spots. And that was obviously not intentional. But that's also bad. You shouldn't be undercoding, because if you're undercoding, it's just as bad as upcoding. And the judge, as you pointed out, Colonel, the chief judge of Maryland, who sat through the trial, saw through all this and said, not only was there no evidence that you committed fraud, but there was actually evidence that your interpretation of the coding guidelines was correct. But he said, but it's very ambiguous, and the government never should have brought this case. And if the other thing that's just preposterous is at closing, the government lawyer says to the jury, he says, you may be asking yourself what the appropriate coding level was. Should it have been a level 3, a level 4, a level 5, a level 2? It doesn't matter. The only thing you need to know is that Dr. Elfenbein is wrong and he's a criminal. Just to show you that they had no idea either what the right code was. They never offered an opinion. They never said that I was doing it wrong. We were billing level 4. We should have built a level 3. We should have built a level 2. They never said any of that. Nothing. Zero. It's just mind-boggling. And it's you just want to beat your head into a wall, because you're like, how can this be happening? You feel like you're a crazy person when you talk about this, but this is my life. This is what happened to me. Like, they come after you for the silliest things. And again, if they really thought I was doing something wrong, this went on for a year. Why couldn't they have picked up the phone and said, hey, doc, we don't understand why you're billing all these level 4s. Could you explain it? And I absolutely would have gone into their office and said, sure, here's your chart that you, the government, put out with your guidelines on how to bill. I followed your rules. And again, the judge said the same thing. He said, you were following the rules. And I would have had a very simple explanation, but they never gave me that opportunity. Instead of asking, they just came across with a sledgehammer and indicted me.
So who would have made that call to ask you? It wouldn't be the prosecutors. It would be somebody in Medicare?
Yes, it would have been someone in Medicare. So they would have done an audit, which they never did, and they would have said, let's look at your charts, and then could you explain why you billed this way? And I'm absolutely sure, happy to, but they never gave me that opportunity, and they never did an audit. They just looked at 5 total charts out of 100,000.
Did the judge ever force them to reveal how they got the information without having the charts that you had custody of? To charge you in the first place?
No. They give so there's an old saying, I've learned this, unfortunately. They go to the grand jury, and the grand jury indicts people. And the old saying in legal circles is the grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. And you can't defend yourself. You don't even know this is happening. It's all behind the scenes. Your lawyer can't be present. You can't be present. They don't tell you what's happening. So you have no idea, and you can't defend yourself. The government can say whatever they want, and then it's sealed testimony that you never get to see. They could make stuff up whole cloth, and you have no recourse. It's crazy, but that's our system.
Yeah, there's also another old saying that's show me the man and I'll show you the crime, by a Soviet prosecutor. And that's the way I feel sometimes, because, I guess the guy that threw the subway at a federal officer that the grand jury in D.C. refused to indict, even though they had evidence, was not a ham sandwich. I don't know what kind of sandwich.
It was an Italian club.
But it's just, it's so bad. You have to have some humor in it, Doc. And I'm glad you still have a sense of humor. I can laugh about it, but good Lord, this is ridiculous from what I can tell. Wait till I ask you the next question, and it's going to be after the break. But people will chuckle a little bit when they hear this next question, because thankfully you didn't cover it in your spiel there. But the next question is also about the coding, and this is you're gonna laugh when you hear this, and you're gonna shake your head and be really angry after you chuckle. We'll be right back with Dr. Ron Elfenbein. He is being weaponization used against him.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
We saw over 100,000 patients during this entire time that the indictment ranges from. They picked 5. They looked at 5 charts, and they didn't even have a coder look at the 5 charts, just the government attorneys. The government lawyers looked at the charts. They didn't have a professional coder look at them, just the government lawyers. We had a professional coder, and of course, I had to pay the guy a fortune to do this, but he went through hundreds of charts. And his conclusion, in which he testified to at trial, was not only was the coding 100% spot on, but a couple of charts were undercoded. And again, the government alleges that we stole $15 million, or in excess of $15 million. They looked at 5 charts.
What is the price difference in terms of reimbursement between a level 3 and a level 4?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it varies depending on the insurance company, but it's about $50, $60. It's not a lot of money.
Welcome back to the Rob Maynard Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. And, you know, when you start peeling the layers back on this stuff, this weaponization stuff, you really find some kooky things. $50 is the difference? You got to be kidding me. Well, my guest today is that man right there, Dr. Ron Elfenbein, who the DOJ is being weaponized against him, and it continues even though we have the Trump administration now. He's up to be retried on this, where he was acquitted by the chief judge already in a 93-page decision, and the appeals, the DOJ under Biden appealed it, and they reversed the judge and remanded it back for a new trial. So, Dr. Ron, I went ahead and played that clip again, even though you said some of that stuff in the last segment. But just because is where I'm at. 5 out of 100,000 charts. They charged you before they had the charge. Here's my question that people are going to chuckle at. Are you the one that filled out the charts?
Not even close.
I told you.
I had nothing to do with the charts. Yeah, and it makes, as you said, I'm very mad about this whole situation. If I wasn't laughing, I'd be hysterically crying.
Yeah,
and I've done plenty of that. But I will tell you that you're absolutely right, Colonel. To your point, we had other people filling out the charts. Now, I did put out edicts and recommendations to the staff saying, look, I've gone through this chart that we talked about. My interpretation is that you should be billing a level 4. We have plenty of providers who testified at trial saying Dr. Elfenbein never pressured me to bill a certain way, and I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. The government, you know, we had templates, because when you're seeing hundreds of people a day in the electronic health records, it's very hard to document, and the documentation is very onerous. So we had templates. Now, I've been an emergency room doctor since 2000. Every single electronic health record offers the ability to make templates for a reason, because everybody uses them. But the government somehow made it out to be something nefarious, as if, like, you know, he's a criminal because he uses these templates. And I had a gun to everybody's head saying you have to bill a level 4. That was not the case. People were free to do whatever they wanted, and I did not sign or see any of these patients or sign any of these charts. So it's insanity that this would be the case. But again, I find myself in this situation. This is the truth. This is what's going on.
So let me make sure I understand this very clearly now. You can, as this essentially the supervision over this operation, you can make recommendations, say, hey, I've reviewed the chart of the government. Here's what I think it is. But the doctors, the providers, in this case, I think nurse practitioners, are able and freely do make their own decisions on these codes.
Yes, they were able to make, and again, I recommended to build a level 4, and but they testified at trial that they were free to change it if they wanted to, and I never put any pressure on them, that they could do whatever they wanted to do. It's crazy. I mean, it defies logic, and just the unfairness of it all. That literally they could have just picked up the phone at any point in time and just said, "Hey, send us these charts and let's talk about it." But they never gave me that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, so this sequence of them charging you, and then they get their hands on the charts, and then they use the data in the chart at the trial to convince the jury. I'm assuming the jury, you had a jury trial, that that you were guilty of this crime, which is kind of vague too, of fraud. Doesn't that sequence bother you? That's what bothers me about this whole thing, is that it makes me feel like there's something else going on besides they think that you committed a crime.
Yeah, yes, 100%. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And so with a criminal case, I don't know how much your viewers know. I certainly didn't know, so I'm just going to give a quick explanation. With a crime like this, you have to prove two elements. You have to prove that there was an actual crime or falsity, that something was done that was illegal, and you have to prove intent, that there was intent to commit a crime. And in order to quote unquote prove my intent, the government took, as you heard in that clip that you played, the government took emails that I sent to our providers explaining and outlining what evaluation and management coding is, the 5 levels that we talked about, and saying this is the bread and butter of how we get paid. And that's akin to a lawyer telling you billable hours is our bread and butter. And you know what? There's nothing nefarious about that. It's the God's honest truth. That is how we get paid, based on the E&M coding, 100% all day long. Whether you're in the emergency room, whether you're seeing your doctor in his office or her office, or whether you're getting an operation, it's all about E&M coding, and it's all about that's the bread and butter. That's how you get paid. And the government, again, just kept showing that to the jury. Look, he's a criminal. He's greedy. Bread and butter, bread and butter, bread and butter. And as if that was the title of every single email I sent out. And it was just, I mean, I joke, but at trial, I could have said, hey, I just cured cancer. And the prosecutors would have been like, oh, yeah, that's because you can make $100 million. You're greedy. I mean, it's just, you could do no right. No matter what you said or did, they just twisted it and took it out of context.
Yeah, it's very puzzling, because none of it seems nefarious when you read it on its face, like the emails and the recommendations you made on the coding. It's nonsensical. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of, and I don't know if you watched President Trump's trial in New York City or not, it reminds me very much of that, where the judge said, hey, you don't have to, told the jury, hey, you don't have to realize that he committed a specific crime. It could be any one of these 4. The whole jury doesn't have to agree on it. I mean, it sounds it smells like that, and creating crimes out of something that's so vague that you really shouldn't be doing that. I mean, Martin mentioned Jack Smith in the opening clip, and Jack Smith's notorious for that crazy stuff. And it sounds like he may have been, maybe he was really running the Biden DOJ, and we just think he was a special prosecutor. I'm not sure. So your providers that work, you're basically their boss, right? In the clinics?
Yes.
Yeah. And some of them testified. Did they testify about how your leadership was, how you dealt with people? Were there complaints, or were they happy with it? I mean, what was their sense of? Because I'm sure they asked about all that, right?
So they had 2 providers, one of whom, they had one provider and one, our former coder, who was disgruntled because my business partner fired her, and she was disgruntled, and I think she thought I was the one that fired her, but I actually was advocating to keep her. Long story, but she was, I can't get into too much detail, but she was testifying that she thought that the coding was not right. But then when my lawyer asked her about the level 4 coding, she said, no, I thought the level 4 was okay. So she was talking about level 5 coding, not level 4 coding. So, which is what the government came after me for. The other person was a provider who also was disgruntled and was fired. The other 3 providers who testified, or 2, they testified on my behalf, and they said that they felt free to write their own templates, change their templates, change the coding. They could care less. And they said that I didn't put any pressure on them. Let me rephrase that. They also, the other two people that were on the government side, there were lots of emails from me, again, talking about the coding and stuff. Not a single email from them coming back saying I'm not comfortable with this. So they said, "Oh yeah, well I told them at at a meeting and blah blah blah," but there was no evidence of that. That never happened. I will tell you that. And every meeting I had my business partner with people, and he said that never happened. But it begs the question: why would you not send an email if you really felt that? I sent hundreds of emails. If they felt that strongly that there was something wrong, why would you not put it in writing? But there's no evidence. They didn't.
Or why not just use the coding that you think is right?
Well, right, exactly. Which other people testified that they did. So it's crazy. The whole situation is crazy. And again, I can't believe I'm living this, but it's my life. I mean, this is what happened.
Yeah. So where are we at in the sequence of events, Ron?
So right now, I'm trying to bring attention to this so that the Trump people kind of walk away and say, hey, this is not a case that we feel like we should be bringing. It's crazy, but I'm facing a new trial in August. And I think, Colonel, your viewers might be saying, well, why did they target you? What did I do that? Why would they come after me? And if you don't mind, I'd like to get into that. I think, is that okay? I don't want to jump on, Okay. So
yeah, I plan on talking about that in the last segment. We got about 3 minutes left in this one.
Right.
And you can start talking about it now. There's plenty to talk about on it. So you can go ahead and lay the groundwork now.
Well, so first of all, I was a candidate for the Republican state Senate in the state of Maryland, and I almost beat a 30-year incumbent. And I believe to this day, I still hold the record for the largest fundraiser as a Republican challenger. I raised the most money as a Republican challenger for state Senate, and I'm very well known in Republican circles in the state of Maryland. And I'm pretty active in Republican politics. My business partner was a sitting state delegate, Republican state delegate, who, after this all happened, they tied to me and kept saying, during his reelection, "Oh, he's a criminal, he's a fraudster," and he ended up losing his election. But I think the real reason that they came after me was because I was a huge advocate for the monoclonal antibodies, which, if your viewers remember, this was a scary time, and we were basically imprisoned in our homes, and the monoclonal antibodies were a cure for COVID. And I was on Fox, I was on CBS, I was on Breitbart, I was on Sky News, Newsmax, I was on everything that would have me talking about how wonderful the monoclonal antibodies were. And this was sort of a direct threat to the narrative of everybody needs a vaccine, because you don't need to be vaccinated if you can get cured very easily, by the way, with very few side effects, very few risks. Essentially none. Right. And then the Biden administration in December of 2021, very curiously, put out an edict that said that when there was an Omicron spike, and they said that the monoclonal antibodies we had at the time didn't work against Omicron. So they said, well, we believe that the 70% of cases are of Omicron, and therefore we're going to stop the program nationwide. And I got a letter saying you cannot give monoclonal. We had refrigerators full of this stuff, and we had 500 people over the next week and a half, 2 weeks booked to come get infusions to save their life. And we had to cancel every single one of them. And this medicine was just sitting in our refrigerators, just gathering dust. And I got calls from all sorts of family members and friends, and people like, look, my father is dying and he's got cancer and blah, blah, blah. And he's got COVID. Can you please infuse him? And I had to tell these people, no, I can't, because I could lose my medical license. I'm sorry. And I went on Fox and I was so angry. And I said, look, the Biden administration is going to kill people because they're misreading the data. They're using the wrong data, and they don't know what they're doing. And it turns out I was actually right, because 2 weeks later, they said it was a 70% prevalence. The administration came out and said, oh, yeah, sorry, we were wrong. We misread the data. It's actually 20% prevalence. They were wrong by a factor of 50%. And I said on Fox News, I said, these people, this bureaucratic arrogance, it's awful. They think they know better than everybody else, and they just put themselves, because they're smarter than the rest of the world and they know everything, and they're going to tell everybody how they need to live their lives. So I went on Fox, I went on Newsmax, I went on a whole bunch of these organizations, national and international television, just castigating and just ripping apart the administration for their stupidity.
Let me stop you right there so we can take this last commercial break, and then we'll continue this. We'll pick right back up on it after this break.
Okay.
The work has just started in many ways, because for the opposition, their motto is weaponization today, weaponization tomorrow, weaponization forever.
What I've witnessed is the full force of a weaponized government, a system that punishes citizens instead of protecting them.
The DOJ uses novel applications of statutes to go after people that it doesn't like under vague conspiracy statutes.
Charge them with forced labor conspiracy.
He was given 300 years for a conspiracy case.
The FBI surrounded my house.
No underlying crime. It's a victimless crime.
With a conspiracy, they don't need any victims.
What they're doing is they're saying, we don't like this group of people, or we don't have a statute to prosecute them for it. Let's creatively interpret this thing and put these people in prison.
I could rattle off numerous cases, state and federal level. That should give everyone in this room chills.
I did 3 years in solitary confinement.
Arrested at gunpoint at 7 a.m. with 10 SUVs and helicopters.
I heard the prosecutor on day one manufacture evidence to the jury and lie to the jury.
The prosecutors had to admit that the evidence was fake, but the case continued on and they went to trial.
If that institution continues to be eroded, then we lose that freedom for all time.
What they did to my family was atrocious.
And it's going to be worse the next time, unless we stay united.
Weaponization Watch has to continue, and you're going to help us continue the mission.
I think the most important word in Weaponization Watch is the word watch. We have less than 3 years, ladies and gentlemen, to turn this ship around.
Welcome back to the Rob Maida Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and Weaponization Watch launched early December of 2025, and we are well on our way. You just heard from some of the most important people in the program that are helping launch this organization and why it's important. If you haven't figured it out by now, my guest today is Dr. Ron Elfenbein, who is a victim of this weaponization. He's an emergency room doc. I mean, a stellar performer. This man is an exceptional performer. He is highly accoladed. He was on every news channel as the expert in various things, especially the early days of the pandemic, because he was so highly regarded, and he's been had DOJ weaponized against him for a second time. They're going after him on a case that he was acquitted of, and they're doing a retrial. Thanks to the Biden DOJ and their appeal. Dr. Ron, you were talking before the break about how you had called out the Biden administration on all those TV channels and said they were going to kill people. What happened after that?
I went on with my life and I didn't think anything of it. But then 4 months later, I was driving my 3-year-old to his gymnastics class, and I get a call from our manager at one of our facilities, and she said, "There are these federal agents that want to talk to you." And I said, "Talk to me about what?" And she said, "I don't know. They won't talk to me. They want to talk to you." I said, "All right, put them on the phone." And they started asking me all sorts of questions about billing. And I said, "Look, we have a billing company. I have no idea about the billing. I don't need to do with it. I'm the medical director. I'm not the business guy." And they kept going on and on. I said, "You know what? Call my attorney, deal with her." And then the next thing I know, she calls me back like half an hour later and said, "This is a broad investigation about you." And I was like, and then a week later, a few days later, I got indicted. I mean, I was just completely out of the blue, and scary as all get out. And I was just watching the video that you just showed, the footage of many of my friends that I've come to become friends with, these people that are just, again, I said this at the beginning, but I'm not alone. This is a horrible story, my story, but I'm not the only person out there this is happening to. And it could be anybody, and it's just so frightening.
Yeah, I don't know if you can talk about it or not yet, that you're still facing a trial again, but how high are your legal bills?
Very. I mean, more than my house is worth, considerably more than my house is worth. I'm never going to be able to pay them back. I don't want to throw out specifics, and I'll be honest. The lawyers, they got to get paid. They're doing a job, and they've been very magnanimous. They've been very wonderful. They've been, look, just pay us when you can. So I write them a small check every single month of what I can afford to pay them, and but now I'm facing it again. So it's going to be at least twice, or at least the same amount that I paid last time, and I don't have those resources. It's just, ridiculously high. Let's put it that way. I mean, there's 3 weeks of trial. They had to get prepared. I had to have experts. I mean, all this stuff costs way more than homes are costing, and it's just it's crazy. And the government has unlimited resources. They don't care. They can just keep coming after you and coming after you and coming after you, because what does it mean to them? They get paid regardless. The lawyers.
Exactly. And I don't know where you live, but I've owned a home in the DC Beltway area. And the surrounding area, those homes are quite expensive. I mean, they're worth a lot of money. So, I mean, that's a significant amount. Do you have a legal defense fund that you're trying to raise money?
Yes, I do. Thank you for asking. I have a GoFundMe. I'm actually going to change it to a I know people don't like GoFundMe because of what they did to the truckers. I forgot about that, and somebody actually on X pointed that out to me, and I'm glad that they did, because it's one of my to-do list is to open up another one on Give Go Fund, I think it's called, or
Give Send Go,
whatever that other Give Send Go. Thank you. And that I'll probably do tonight when I have the chance to. But I do have a GoFundMe. Did I send it? I sent it to you, right?
Yeah, you sent it to me. We'll put it in.
Okay.
We'll put it in all of our postings. But if you can send me the Give Send Go one once you get it constructed, I'll use that too.
Absolutely. Thank you. And, I just want to put this into, again, just to go back to like the first day of trial. So the guy who, like, the government's quote unquote expert, with whom I guess you'd say the whole case was built. The government went to this guy and said, find us a case. And he was so awful, and he had no idea what he was talking about, to the point literally where my lawyers on cross-examination just completely obliterated him and made him look so bad that the judge actually kicked the jury out of the courtroom and called us all up to the bench. And again, this is public information, so you can pull up the transcripts of the trial and see this. And he looked at the government and pointed his finger at him and said, "What the hell are you doing? Where is the crime?" And they said, your expert witness about whom this whole case is built on just got obliterated and knows nothing about anything and was utterly impeached. That's the term that they use when you destroy somebody on the stand. And the guy, "Oh no, Judge, you'll see. There's more evidence coming," and blah blah blah. And he said, "Well, I'm really close to throwing this case out right now, so you better show me something soon." And then in his 93-page opinion, he wrote, "The court expressed concern during trial regarding Quindoza," that's this guy's testimony, explaining that his testimony appeared to undermine the entire legal foundation for it all. I mean, like, this was day one, and this was the guy that they based their entire case on. It's so frustrating to be in this situation, and again, I'm not the only one that's going through this kind of thing, but that and you saw Martha Byrne a minute ago on that video from the Weaponization Watch. She was talking about her husband Michael. I've become very good friends with these people since it happened, and that's a blessing to me. You always try to look at the bright side, and that I've met people like yourself, Colonel, people like Cynthia Hughes, people like Martha Byrne and her husband Michael. just these wonderful people that the same thing happened to. And she made the point that the prosecutors were just making things up. And I always used to think that can't happen, but it does. It absolutely does. They lie, they make things up, and then the court believes them because it's the government. And then the jury believes them because it's the government. And they're supposed to be honest and they're telling the truth. And they make things up and they lie and they cheat and they don't care and there's no accountability. And it's horrible.
So since the judge said that on day one, your trial was 3 weeks long, the original trial, Ron. As time went on, did he say anything else?
No, he did not. And I wish he had. But I think in his defense, look, you pointed out judges don't do this, right? They don't write they don't overturn a jury verdict, and they certainly don't write 93-page opinions. Even the Supreme Court doesn't write 93-page opinions. So I think he was trying. I think it's a big deal for the judge to do that. So I think, and thank God for his being such a courageous guy and doing the right thing, because it would have been so easy for him to not do that. But I think he was trying to let the system play out and let the jury do the right thing. And I think he thought that's what was going to happen. But I'll tell you, people ask me, why do you think you got convicted by the jury? And I think it's because the government, they kept changing their story. First it was, we talked about this, but first it was time, time. You didn't spend enough time with the patients. Well, we destroyed that element. There was no factual basis for that whatsoever. Then they said, well, was it medically unnecessary? We destroyed that. We had a doctor who testified saying, of course it's medically necessary. They didn't have anybody testify about that. And then their last thing to the jury was, and this was the closing, and they go last. Okay, so they get to go last. You don't have a chance to rebut what they said.
Right.
And they said, use your common sense to the jury. They said the defense showed you all these charts and all these complicated things, and they held this chart up, and this chart that we were talking about, which really isn't that complicated, but they said, use your common sense. Does any of what they're saying make sense? And of course, if I had the opportunity to rebut them, I would have said, well, have you ever filed a tax return with the IRS? Like, none of this makes any sense. You can't use common sense. There's a complex set of rules that the government, by the way, sets up, and I followed. They're now saying, don't follow the rules, use your common sense. Like, as crazy as that is, that's what they said. And I think it resonated with the jury. And then, of course, they played dirty. They put my tax returns up and they said, look, right before the pandemic, he made this, and his business billed $800,000.
Right.
The next year, there's a pandemic, and we billed $20 million. But of course, we saw over 100,000 people. And there was a nationwide pandemic. Like, of course we were going to bill a lot. Like, that's not nefarious. That's logical. And they said, look, he made a lot of money. And I didn't even really make that much money. Of course I did okay, but I wasn't like Tony Soprano hiding money in my ceiling, in my vents. I don't know where they come up with this stuff, but that's, to the jury, who most of those people were none of them were professionals. And, they look at that and they say, oh, here's a rich doctor, who the government wants to come after for a reason. So we're going to convict him. And thank God the judge was really paying attention and realized that this was bogus from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we will push this show out again once we get it in post-production, and we'll put links to your legal defense funds in there, tag you. Folks, you can follow Ron on X at Ron Elfenbein, MD. You can follow Weaponization Watch on X, and I'll post all those in the social media, probably go out tomorrow. But I just wish you luck. You're in our prayers. Hopefully we can do something to head off this new trial thing. And folks, write a letter to the President of the United States. You can do that these days, and to the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, bring her attention to this case. And of course, Ed Martin, you can write to him too. Although he seems to be, he is an ally, I think, a direct Trump appointee. And I think anybody else that's been appointed by the president is going to be an ally in this type of situation, right?
Absolutely. And again, I want to tell you a really quick story, but I also want to put another shout out for Cynthia Hughes and for the Weaponization Watch. And of course, for you, Colonel, you're a big part of that. It's a wonderful organization. I highly recommend people check them out and support them. I got a phone call out of the blue, and I didn't recognize the number. And normally I don't answer those kinds of calls, but it was from Wisconsin. And for whatever reason, I said, you know what? I don't recognize this number, so I answered it. And I'm not going to name the person's name, but they got on the phone and they said, "Hey, Doc, this is United States Senator so-and-so. I saw your interview with Mary Talley Bowden, and I want to help." And he was very gracious with the time, and I talked to him, and then he had me in his office for an hour, and with 3 staffers, and we went over everything, and he had to pull his jaw up off the floor a couple times because he was like, "I can't believe this. This is crazy." And I said, "Yeah, I know."
It is.
And so hopefully he's getting involved as well and helping. And I think the point in telling you this is you just never know who's going to push the right button or who's going to see what or where or when or how. So you're right, Colonel. Reach out to your elected officials, please. Call people, write letters. All that stuff really does help.
Absolutely.
And I'm not alone
Thanks,
in this.
Sir. You're
Thank
not
you very
alone.
much, Colonel.
You're not alone in this. No American that's undergoing this is alone in this. We're going to fight it all the way to till beyond the bitter end, because you can always split this. Well, thanks, Dr. Ron. Well, tomorrow is Truth Thursday. The first half of the show, I'll have the deputy director of NCRI. That's the Iranian resistant movement that actually has people on the ground inside the country. Hopefully, they're kicking off a revolution, and we'll have a democracy there once again. I'll see you then.
We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a